So the first thing you need to understand is, for a criminal record check, the data, the information about the criminal record check is stored against the volunteer. In this example here, go to the search volunteers page, go to Akeem Mackenzie. Doesn't look like an Akeem, does he? Akeem Mackenzie. And if you go to profile, criminal record check, that's where it's stored. But the key thing is it's stored against a volunteer. So it doesn't have anything to do with any opportunity, really. You can create an opportunity and say, well, this opportunity requires a criminal record, requires a criminal record check. But it still doesn't, there's no link between, that volunteer having a criminal record check and the opportunity. It just checks whether the volunteer's got one. And if they do have one, then it lets them on the opportunity. If they don't, then it won't. So the information is stored against the volunteer. So it's key that you kind of understand that part. How do you add a criminal record check? Well, the easiest way is you either search for the volunteer, like I've just done, either in the global search bar or the search volunteers page I just went to before. Click on profile, and then you've got the main information. Personal details here, where they live here. You scroll down, bank account details for expenses, and then we've got criminal record check down here. Okay, so when you first start an application, imagine the volunteers come in, usually they're brought in their passport or their driver license, whatever they need to show you as ID. Say criminal record check cleared. Well, at that stage, they're not cleared because you haven't sent it off yet. You put in the application reference there, put in the criminal check application date, which is usually going to be today. Google messing around there. Wasn't necessarily ID provided, you might say yes. Sport and driving license, something like that. And you'd save it. Great. And then you filled out the form and you send that off to your criminal record check, whoever processes it, your DBSs. So once that's done, at some stage, the volunteer is going to get it back because the volunteer gets the DBSs back. Which I always find very strange, me personally, but that's the way it works. They get it back and they bring it into you. And then you'd say, oh, great. Okay, let's have a look at it. And you'd see the details of it. And hopefully you'd be able to say, yes, okay, they are cleared. That looks good to me. You can mark down whether it's enhanced or not on here. Then you put in the crim check number. Okay, so that's their actual DBS number, essentially. Okay, not the application number, the actual final DBS number. Criminal check application date, well, we know what that is. We already set that. Criminal check expiry date. Now, most people put that to like 3 years. There is no defined criminal check expiry. People say it's 3 years. It's not actually. They don't, for whatever reason, they don't say that there's a definite date. Some people say, I've had some organizations that say there is no end date to theirs, which kind of, I'm not so sure about. If I don't, personally, I'm not, I wouldn't do that personally. I'd certainly have like a 3-year limit at the very most, probably, before I read them. But some don't. But it's up to you. If there is one, then you can put in the date in here. You might say 1st of the 11th, 2025. Criminal check issuer, DBS, control whatever it is. Click and you save that information. Now, the key thing is when I've changed this criminal check cleared from no to yes, that is the big trigger for the system to say, okay, now they can get an opportunities which require a criminal record check. Okay, the rest of it is just storing information. The expiry date, that's going to help flag up certain things to you, when you look to see which ones are due to expire. But really, the key one is this yes or no here. Okay. When you click it to yes, they can now get on opportunities which require a criminal record check. So click on save. That's it. I've saved that criminal record check against that volunteer. So who can update criminal record checks? So in the main, it's going to be administrators. Okay. Virtually all organizations that do it. It's just the admins who can update the criminal record checks. As you've seen here, I'm logged in as admin. Obviously, the volunteer, they can't update it themselves for obvious reasons. Now, there is a slight caveat to this. There is the ability to let trusted providers, so that's a type of user. You get your providers. You can mark providers down as being trusted. These are usually providers who they tend to be providers who work for your organization, but you could use it for any purpose. But a trusted provider means that you're giving them a heightened level of privilege. You're giving them extra abilities than a normal provider. And one of those extra abilities would be allowing them to update volunteers' criminal record check information. Okay, because I know some organizations have that. They have providers out there who work for their organization, but they say, actually, the person who deals with the volunteers face-to-face is this particular provider, the person who works for our organization. So they'll make that provider a trusted provider. And then by going into super admin settings and going down to options and trusted providers here, down here somewhere, we've got allow trusted providers to create opportunities which require a criminal record check, and allow trusted providers to update volunteers' criminal record check details. So there's two things there you could switch on, okay, which would mean that any trusted providers on the system could do that, could change the details, and they could also create opportunities that require a criminal record check. Okay, because obviously you may have an issue, you probably will have an issue if you've got an external organization out there, Boy Scouts down the road, and they require a criminal record check for their opportunity. Well, that criminal record check has to be done with them. It can't be done with you in the main. It's not going to be able to be done with your organization. It has to be done with their organization. Okay, so normally you wouldn't allow that provider to be able to create opportunities which require a criminal record check, because that's down to them to deal with that. Not, they can't rely on your criminal record check that you save against the volunteer. If that makes sense. Where if it's one of your providers who works for your organization, then you can make them a trusted provider, and you could allow them to create opportunities which require a criminal record check and update their details. Does that make sense to people? Have I lost anyone? Yep. Sure. Good. Okay, to make someone a trusted provider, just while we're talking about it, if you go into providers here, you can just click on the provider, change status in there. Yeah, grant trusted status and access. You can move it to there. Okay, or you can even just do it by click on the provider name, and you've got up here somewhere make trusted. Does the same thing. Okay, so that's going to give them that extra ability, that heightened privilege. Okay, next we got add in opportunities which require a criminal record check. Now the current version of the system, okay, because I know we've got a big update coming out this weekend. When you're adding, you've created the opportunity up here, create opportunity, you put in the details, and you get down to the bit that says require criminal record check. Let me find it here, down here somewhere. Require criminal record check. Here it is. There it is. Volunteers must have a criminal record check to see and join the opportunity. You change that to yes, and you'd save it. Okay, create the opportunity. In the new version of the system, okay, it looks like this. This is the create opportunities page on the new version. Okay, it's on one of the later steps. So you put in the details of the opportunity, you upload your image, you would choose the location, you would say you want to manage the volunteers, fully manage the volunteers, and then somewhere down here we've got opportunity restrictions. Do you want to allow everyone to access this opportunity? No, only people who've got a criminal record check. So you click no. Now that stage there, must have criminal record check to join. Now there is, apart from the location where this option is located, there's a slight change as well in the update, in this update, in that we are moving to, rather than this kind of slightly mixed up version of certain restrictions mean that you can see the opportunity but not join it, but other restrictions mean you can't see it at all, and it's different variation. Rather than having that, we have changed to a simpler system of saying, every person can see every opportunity, but they won't be able to join it unless they meet the restriction criteria. Okay, because we went through a phase of people saying, well, what's the point in them seeing opportunities they can't get on? But we've realized over time actually that just gets more complex going down that road, and it's kind of a rabbit hole you don't want to go down. So we're going to be changing it in this update to everyone can see all opportunities. Okay, like if they require a criminal record check, even if the volunteer doesn't have it, they'll still see that opportunity, but they won't be able to get onto it. They won't be able to join it unless they've got a criminal record check stored against them. Okay, which is hence why that says must have a criminal record check to join. And the old one says must have criminal record check to see or join the opportunity. Okay. You understand that? Everyone with me? Yep. Okay. So that's how we add an opportunity with a criminal record check. Who can add criminal record check opportunities? I've explained that now. So admins can do it, and trusted providers, if you go into that and change that option against the trusted providers, allow them to do that. How to see expiring criminal record checks. So if you go to reporting, down to criminal record checks, okay, expiring checks, you'll see them in here. It's a select expiry period. If I select, I bet I don't get any. Oh, there's one there. Expiring criminal record check. This expires in 365 days. Let me put it down for a year. Okay, so that's telling me. So you can quickly do a check, and this kind of prompts you, obviously, before they run out, maybe 3 months before. It's what people tend to do, to get hold of that volunteer. Then and say, we need to update it. Do you want to come in again, and we'll run another DBS check for you.
Steve, that list you get there is from all the volunteers that you've got on your system.
Yep.
So when I go to that list, it's a very long list of people who have just registered. They're in my search volunteer list, but they're not current volunteers. So
it should only pick up ones. It'll only pick up volunteers which have a criminal record check against them, and which is, so if you go to a volunteer which doesn't have you haven't put any criminal record check information in, then they won't appear on this list.
Yeah.
It's only going to pick up volunteers where you've said an expiry date. You've said here's, you've put in, you've said yes, they have a criminal record check. You've changed that option that I mentioned before from no to yes down here. You've changed that from no to yes down here, and it's looking at that date there.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, I understand that that's that it probably can't be more complicated than that, because obviously I've got volunteers who have criminal records check data in there, but they left sort of a year ago, kind of thing. So I'll be getting all those volunteers who are sort of currently volunteering, but sort of also who have left. So, and obviously there isn't any way of filtering that out.
I mean, we could potentially do something like that. I can see. I understand the issue that you're explaining. It's just, what do we mean by left? That's the thing, isn't it? It's how do we define who's left? Because people just might stop using the system. I suppose you could say it might be a useful filter on here to say been inactive, have been active in the last 12 months and haven't, about to expire. Maybe, so we could say people who haven't logged in, you know what I mean? Maybe that's what we can say. People who haven't logged in for a year, and also, people who have logged in the last 12 months and also have an expiry, the DBS about to expire. Maybe that's a definition we could use, and we could build a function for something like that.
Yeah, I mean, ours is, of course, ours is different. I think how we use the system to a lot of your organizations, because obviously we have all of our volunteers come in every week, and so most of our roles are flexible, and the way that I can see who are my current active volunteers is I use groups. So all of my current active ones are in a group, and that's how I can see who they are. So I don't know if other people can use your system in that way, but that's how I use it. So ideally I would be able to filter out who's in a group, but I don't know if that would be meaningful for anyone else.
I could certainly see how just saying that people who have been active in the last 12, who have logged in the last 12 months, essentially, or been active.
Yeah, I suppose
that would definitely could cover a lot of organizations. I think it's quite a specific way when you go down the groups way, because no one else will do that. I don't know no one else who's kind of grouping active volunteers or putting them in a group, in all honesty. But I mean, would it, if we looked at ones which were inactive and we made a filter on here, would that be a benefit to you? Would that help you out? Because I'm guessing if they've in that group, then they must have logged in the last 12 months or been active in the last 12 months in the system.
Well, the problem is, you're not going to like this, but
Go on, hit me with it.
but we don't ask our volunteers to log their hours because no one in my organization asks me about hours. We don't collect hours.
Do they log into the what do they do? What's the volunteers' interaction with the system? Do they do anything? Do they log in at all?
They might log in to change their personal details. They might log in. What else would they log in for?
To search for opportunities, wouldn't they try and join opportunities, or do you put them on there yourself?
Yeah, no, they could go on there to kind of search opportunities, but yes, the hours thing has been a bit of a challenge. And when we set up kind of sessional ones, they don't go on and put themselves on because they're coming in every week, and so they don't want to be it's we use it in a a slightly different way to others.
I'll have a chat with the development team. I think they logged in I could see that being useful for a number, that's more across the board. I think yours is a very specific setup, and the way you use it pretty different it's definitely different to the norm. But then I'll have a look at groups. Maybe there's something we can do around groups as well to make your life easier. But yeah, so leave it at me. I'll have a chat with them. Maybe something we can do.
Okay.
Next update. But yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point actually.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can see which ones are expiring checks here, and then we've got expired checks, which would appear down here. There isn't any on this particular system. Okay, so that's an easy way of spotting them. And obviously, once you see them, you click on the name there, and then you'd say, okay, get the volunteer to come in. Click on profile, get the volunteer to come in, and you'd update the expiry details there. Okay, so which volunteer?
I think this data also appears on one of the reports. So you can also download the Excel report and then kind of filter the
you can you can do it on the search volunteers. I think it's down here, and it's under criminal check. So you can say, okay, show me everyone who's criminal check, who has a criminal check. You might say no or yes. So you can do certain things like that. I don't think there is a kind of criminal check expiry, but maybe you're wrong.
I was thinking about kind of when you go to download data.
Right. Okay. Yeah. When you go down to the download data down here.
I think this information appears.
Yeah, it would do. Yeah.
In there too. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good thing to mention. Which volunteers don't have a criminal check? So I've showed you how to do that. So you can see which ones don't, obviously through this filter here. You just through criminal record checks, say no to it, search, and that's it. Got a list of people who don't have it. Then what systems setups work best? You probably figure this out for yourself, in that because in general it's the admin who is actually processing those criminal record checks. Then it works well for certain organizations. For ones like volunteer centers, who are maybe not creating any of their own opportunities, then it's not going to work. It's probably not going to be suitable for them. The reason being is that the person who's requiring the criminal record check is a provider who's external, don't work for their organization. So the DBS, my understanding, the DBS has to be with the organization that they're actually volunteering for. So you can't record a DBS, a volunteer center. I can't record a DBS for a volunteer and then have the Boy Scouts down the road create an opportunity which requires a DBS, and they use my DBS. Now, I think there may be some scenarios where they can, but it's limited, where it's like they can transfer it over. But for the majority, that's not the case, is my understanding. So yeah, so it works well for the organizations like, I don't know, like YHA, for example, is one of our customers, where they say, okay, well, all of our providers work for us, so we're processing the DBSs ourselves, so it makes sense. But for the volunteer centers, not so much. Now, is there any questions over that before I try and catch Chris to have a chat with you about the updated module? Okay with that? We covered there.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Did you get the manual when you booked? There should have been a manual emailed out to you, which basically covers all of that. Okay. So hopefully that's useful as well. Right. Spare me a second. I'm just going to try and get Chris on board. One sec.
Thanks, Steve. We're a volunteer centre, Flora, so a lot of the functions don't work for us because our providers are all external. So it's really challenging to kind of see it, to view it from a provider's point of view and manage it from that side.
Right, that's interesting. Yeah, where actually I'm my organized. Yeah, no, that is interesting. I can see that. I always thought though that perhaps TeamKinetic worked better, in that situation where you're a umbrella organization and then you have some organizations under you who are the ones managing the volunteers. I sort of thought that TeamKinetic was set up for that kind of.
I don't know, it comes with its challenges.
There's pros and cons with both, to be honest with you. There's some functions which work, the reasons I said, work really well for a single organization where they're creating all the opportunities. Then there's other things that work very well for volunteer centers. So it's just a mix. I mean, we've thought about, it's in all honesty, it's quite hard because with the volunteer center route, you end up going down a road where you really, you keep giving them all the functions that every admin's got, which kind of makes them an admin. And then you plow that onto them, and then it's like, well, what do you become if they've got access to everything? And it can get quite complicated, because if you imagine say it's a Boy Scouts down the road, and I'm a volunteer centre, and they record a DBS against it. Well, that DBS is just for them, which means that if the volunteer tries to join any other opportunities, they're still going to have to do a DBS. You could end up having a volunteer having a whole myriad of different DBSs for all these different organisations.
Yeah.
So it's not that straightforward. But something we're always thinking about is how can we do that? What things can we move over into the provider side and kind of going to make sense? Hi, Chris. You're right.
Hi, guys. Everyone all right?
Hi, Chris.
Hi. So Flora, you may have seen this at the conference the other week, so I do apologise.
No, that's okay.
I'm repeating myself, but and I'm not 100% sure what Steve's covered with you so far. I'm just going to share my screen if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
I've just covered the standard functions that are
okay. All right.
At the moment, nothing to do with what.
So I'll give you a very, very brief bit of history and a little bit of context as to where we're going and what we hope you guys might want to get involved with us on. During COVID, it became apparent that one of the massive bottlenecks on well, even before COVID, there's been a well-known issue for quite a long time around DBS and the fact that you have to keep on getting re-DBS'd, and it becomes a bottleneck for an awful lot of organisations. It's a cost that is a bit annoying and frustrating. It's a frustration to volunteers, and all this was people were aware of before COVID. Then COVID hits, and all of a sudden the NHS needs 1 million people to volunteer, and the massive bottleneck is DBS. And prior to that, within DCMS, there'd been a group set up around digital ID and verification, and one of the business cases for setting up this group was around DBS. There's also a lot of work going on around this idea of digital ID being able to be verified. So these sort of ideas have been floating around, and some of these ideas are much bigger than just volunteering on its own, to do with things like right to work and all these other things. But basically, this group came together, and during COVID, it all got supercharged a little bit. And finally, sort of the guys behind DBS, the Cabinet Office, DCMS, started to put a lot of pressure on DBS to say, you need to sort yourself out. The organisation we work with is an umbrella organisation. They're called First Advantage, and they're one of the 2 biggest umbrella organisations that are out there at the moment. Now, First Advantage, they're an American company that bought a British company that were one of the biggest British companies. And part of this thing that they bought was this product called Know Your People. And Know Your People enables you to do background checks of a whole range. So you can do driving license checks, you do right to work checks, you can do DBS checks, which is all great. And what we've been able to do is we've been able to integrate the Know Your People system into TeamKinetic. And we've been working on it for 2 years, this integration. Because of everything else that's happened in that meantime, Know Your People and First Advantage have also been working on it. And what we've ended up with is hopefully a really simple way for you to be able to DBS your volunteers without them really feeling like they've ever left TeamKinetic. Okay. So I'm just going to bring up some slides here and share, do it as a slideshow. And this just shows you the process. It's all done from the volunteer's phone. And on this first set of pages here, we've got an ID verification stage. This all exists now, and we're ready. We're ready to launch it. Just waiting for First Advantage to give us permission to do it. But what you do first is you verify your ID. So what would happen? A volunteer would come into our system. If the requirement is switched on that a volunteer needs a DBS and they haven't got one, it would take them into this workflow. It would bounce them into this process where they can start to apply for a DBS at the point at which they say this opportunity requires a DBS. So it takes away the fact that you've got to start this process with them. It automates it to some extent. Okay. And the idea is that they would say, have you already had your ID verified? Now, this is one of the really cool things that's happened on the back of COVID, is they're trying to give the ownership of the DBS to the person, and they're trying to make that person, they're trying to give it so the person can hold and carry that DBS around. So if a volunteer's already got verified ID, there's a service called Yoti that the ID can be held in a wallet on their phone. So it basically means that they don't have to re-verify their ID over and over again. Once they've done this once, you don't have to do it once, which is great because it starts reducing again what the volunteer has to do. So if they haven't verified their ID, it takes them on this process where they can scan a passport. It checks their face. They've got to do things like blink and move their face to make sure they're not a picture. And this is directly linked via the app to the passport office. And if they use a driving license, we can also use that as well. But it verifies that they are who they're claiming to be. Okay, and it does it all from the phone. At this point here, once they've had their ID verified, they then they can set up basically a profile in this wallet on the phone to mean that if they want to do it again in the future, they can share that verified ID with other services that might require it. Which we're starting to move into this idea of volunteer passporting at this point, because this verified ID, we can add credentials to it. One of those credentials might be a DBS, for example. But they can create a little wallet on their phone that allows them basically to have their verified ID and their DBS in something that they can hold and control. What that means for TeamKinetic is if they go to another TeamKinetic site, we can basically scan a QR code and that volunteer can say, I'm happy to share my DBS with you and I'm happy to share my verified ID with you. So you can see that the volunteer, that as an organization at that point, you'll be able to accept those credentials. That's the idea. But here we go. The volunteer then, they've created their ID, they've set up their wallet, and the next thing they can do at that point is start their criminal check. And you can see here, it's really straightforward. They put their address details in, and it asks them the current address. And it's the kind of things they would have done on the paper form. And it shows how far they've got. They can save it as they're going along. They can add addresses. They can tell them when they've completed all the appropriate information. And they can submit that to First Advantage. First Advantage are the signatories. And they have a service level agreement that they'll sign the form within an hour. And then it goes into the normal DBS process. What happens at that point then is First Advantage will respond. You would have a First Advantage account that as the organization, you can check to see where that DBS is up to. The volunteer will never have to do anything like that. What they will get within TeamKinetic is an update as to when their DBS has been cleared and completed. And you would also get that same update. But that DBS will also be added to their wallet, to their Yoti wallet. So their DBS is linked to their verified ID. So in the future, if they want to share it with another organization, they can do, which is all super duper clever. And when you put that, you layer that up with sort of some of the other stuff we're doing with the verified ID, the lockable photo, the ID badge or QR code with the same lockable photo on there, the referencing module that we offer, the digital wallet from Yoti, and the fact that we're going to be able to add certification and qualifications to that Yoti wallet as well. If they're verified qualifications, it really starts to create this idea of a volunteer passport that people have been talking about for a long time. Now, there's a lot of stuff covered there. So has anybody got any particular questions about that as a process? Go for it, Flora.
At what point in, I suppose, the kind of recruitment onboarding process does this happen, and can you decide when to initiate that? Because, for example, for our roles, because we work with children, you know, and vulnerable adults, we have to have, like, you know, an interview kind of process. So we wouldn't want to initiate that, you know, until that's done.
That's fair enough. To be confirmed is the honest answer. We haven't integrated it into the project. We've got some ideas about how we'd like to, which is why we've asked people to join us on a bit of a steering group for this. But I would imagine it'd be similar to some of the other elements that, you know, you could do it as part of the onboarding process, or you could do it as part of the opportunity process. I have a feeling we'll have to do it in both. It may be triggered at different places in different people's onboarding journey, and organizations may have different views as to when they want to do this.
Okay.
So I think it's going to be both. I don't know is the honest answer right now, but I think it's going to be both. And the fact you've asked that question means that we'll try our best to integrate it in both those ways.
Yeah. I mean, also, is there a charge for this? Because we're already we do all of our DBS checks through Know Your People. And of course, because it's volunteers, we don't get charged for it.
Yeah, so the DBS is free because they're volunteers. We can led to believe the update service is going to be free as well, but they haven't added that to the API as yet. But that's on its way. That's on the roadmap. You do pay the management fee still, though, which I don't know if you're using Know Your People. What I've been led to believe is they will try and match whatever you're being charged now, that it shouldn't change. That's what they've.
Okay, yeah.
I can't promise that. That's because the relationship will be with First Advantage, not with ourselves. So, you know, I don't think it's going to cost you anything different, but I can't promise that.
Okay.
It shouldn't do.
Yeah. So that all sounds really great. When can we start using it?
It's a great question. And I've literally emailed Alan about it this morning and yesterday to say, come on, Alan, what's going on? They launched it 2 weeks ago, this particular, 3 weeks ago, I think they launched it. And we've been waiting to hear back from them as to when we can launch it within our product. So it's how long's a piece of string right now, I guess, is the best answer I can give you. But as soon as it's ready to go, we will be letting everybody know. Okay. We're going to start with a relatively small group to try it out first, which I think, Flora, you've already expressed an interest to join that group anyway. I'm pretty sure.
I have. Yeah, I have.
Yeah. We just haven't been able to move forward until the guys at First Advantage sort of give us the green light, and there's a few bits and bobs we've got to connect up. So.
Did you say that they've already launched it? So as a First Advantage or sort of Know Your People account holder already, should I have heard about this already?
Again, I feel they may have launched it on a smaller scale with a couple of organizations.
Yeah.
It's sort of live, but not fully out there live just yet.
Okay. It's great though.
Yeah, a lot of people have been asking about it, so I think this will be very popular integration once we get it up and running.
It's super simple from the volunteer standpoint. When they go to the opportunity which requires a DBS, they're basically prompted with a link they've got to click, and it's as simple as that, and it bounces them. It is all phone driven. That's one of the things, and they do have to have those valid forms of ID. So where you've got individuals that may be from overseas, or individuals that may be seeking asylum, or whatever it happens to be, they're not going to be able to use this feature initially. It is very much for those people that have those sort of traditional forms of ID. But let's be honest, the original DBS process wasn't much better for those guys either. So unfortunately, it's not fixing some of those problems. But for the guys that do have the appropriate documentation, it should make their life a lot easier.
I was thinking about how you
we've come a long way from filling in paper forms, haven't we?
We really have. I mean, the hope with this, the hope with this is that the Yoti element of it, which I think is probably the most interesting, will be everybody will have a and Yoti are one of the early companies that are doing this, and you can imagine when it becomes Google and Apple, because they're currently talking to government about allowing this kind of same technology in their wallet. The idea is that in your digital wallet on your phone, you can hold key credentials that have been verified. Means that when you go to another organization, in essence, they can skip a lot of this stuff, and you can scan a QR code. And you can say, yes, this person is who they claim to be. They have a DBS, and here's their number. You can check it and make sure they're not on any ban lists. here's their qualifications. They've done their safeguarding. They've done their first aid. They've done this, and they're by verified providers. And I'm happy with that. You can start to see how that reduces the barriers to entry for volunteers moving between what we consider to be more high-risk type opportunities.
Massively,
Because
massively.
a volunteer that maybe has worked for Macmillan and done 4 or 5 things only has to do one thing when they come to you guys.
Yeah.
You can get them volunteering that much quicker. It sounds quite exciting, but whether or not some of this works is still to be seen.
Probably a stupid question, but what if there's different levels of DBS where somebody's only got a standard but an advanced needs to be?
So that's a really good question. Right now, this is for enhanced only.
Right.
Ah, okay.
Right, okay.
I believe.
Well, that kind of covers everything, doesn't it? But it's more costly.
You wouldn't do enhanced. Yeah, well, you wouldn't do it. Well, it shouldn't cost any more because you only pay the management fee. The management fee is no different no matter what DBS you do. You do pay, I believe, for standard DBS for a volunteer, but you don't pay for an enhanced.
Right.
I may have got that wrong, but I'm pretty sure that was the case. Yeah, so that's the vision for this thing. Is within your phone you'd carry your right to work clearance, you'd carry your DBS check if you've had one at whichever level you've had, you'll carry any qualifications in there which have been verified, you'll carry your verified ID in the first instance, you are who you claim to be with a photo against it. So it solves a number of problems organizations have. I'm not necessarily sure it solves all that many problems for the volunteer. They're not bothered about a lot of this stuff until you force them to go get that DBS again. It's only at that point they get a bit bothered about it, which is why we think the technology is quite clever, which is why we're sort of investing the energy in it. We're a little bit less confident that all volunteers will want to do this. So it may be it's going to be a bit of a slow burner, and as volunteers come around for their DBS renewals, we might be able to encourage them down this route. Because you're asking them to do more than they've done before. Basically, it's always a tricky one, isn't it? They just want to go and volunteer. They don't want to do any extra stuff. But hopefully, the adoption of this type of technology is going to be driven not just by DBS, but by right to work and by your driving license and all these other things that are going to be eventually. I just think about my kids now and the fact they're on Roblox and buying Robux and all this kind of. It's just the way of the world's going that. You will exist you'll exist as much in the virtual world as you will in the real world.
And actually, if you have one of these online banks that don't exist kind of physically, it's all done through sending them a video of you saying something. And
exactly that. It's the same technology. It's the same. The know your people technology is what underpins a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
So it is very much that same technology. Yeah.
Sounds
what happens when you want your money, though? That's always the worry, Flora. Where'd you go when you want your money?
Well, so far it's great.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Monzo. It's great. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Yeah, I'm a bit annoyed they've taken away the commission-free travel money. That's a bit annoying, but there you go. Won't last forever.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
We'll just wait to hear from you when it's being launched.
Yeah, I believe there's some announcements coming. I don't know if they're coming in the new year from the DBS side of stuff, because there is going to be some changes to the way DBS will operate to make this happen as well. Right now, it's sort of working as DBS traditionally has at the DBS. The DBS always belonged to the individual, but it's quite hard unless you sign up to the update service to reuse the same DBS over and over because you needed the number and a lot of people don't have it. But I believe that DBS are going to do some more work around that and make that more accessible for people. So hopefully that all helps. All right. Cheers, guys.
Thank you, Chris.
Cheers, Chris. Thanks for that.
Thank you so much.
We will be once we get that date, we know something a bit more concrete, we'll come back to you all and let you know. And we'll get that little pilot going with a few of you and see if we can get it integrated into the product so it actually works where you want it to work. Okay.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Right.
Thanks.
Have a good day, everybody.
See you later. Have a lovely day.
Bye.
Thanks, Steve. Take care.
And you take care.